the cumulative sum of the distance between the individual points. As a user or child is dragging their finger across the surface, the hardware is sampling at regular intervals and picks up a point, every couple milliseconds, let's say. And so those are sort of collected into this whole gesture for the purposes of our analysis, and we compute the entire path length over the whole gesture for this gesture length feature. Then gesture duration is just a measure of how long it took them from the start point to the end point of the gesture in milliseconds to make that gesture. So speaking about gesture length first, all of our age groups tended to make shorter length gestures in the presence of visual feedback, but the youngest children and adults showed a smaller difference than the middle groups. So what you see here is that there was a significant effect of visual feedback, but it interacted with participant age. So the gap between the bars is different based on the age group, and that was a statistically significant difference. So we saw that the youngest children and adults showed the smaller difference. That could be partially because we had fewer children in the youngest age group, but we think that in general, this is just showing that adults were less impacted by not seeing their feedback, at least for this feature. And I should say that all of the features, except for the number of strokes, was actually significantly impacted by the presence or absence of visual feedback. So, oops, I went up. There. So the second feature was gesture duration. And in this case, we also saw a significant impact of visual feedback, which also interacted with participant age groups. So we saw that actually all the younger children this time, 10-year-olds and 11 to 13-year-olds, were kind of in a group where they tended to take more time to draw gestures in the presence of visual feedback versus the absence of visual feedback than the 14 to 17-year-olds and adults did. So we kind of can group them that way. And this is significantly different. Now, because this is different, what does that mean? So to interpret it a little bit first, what we see here is that users of all ages, what we saw over all 9 features, and you can read more about that in the paper, is that they tend to be more careful, or they take more time, and things are a little neater when there's actually visual feedback being shown. It could be because they're more careful, they're more self-critical as they're seeing the path laid out for them. But we also hypothesize there could be an effect of fluency. So especially for children and young children, many of the feature differences we saw were magnified for the younger 2 age groups. As the children were drawing, that the visual feedback acted as a sort of check for the sensory